Open up your Bibles to the fourth gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We're going to be there again today. We've been going through John these last few weeks, and we'll be in John's gospel until Easter. Do you know why God gave us YouTube? To learn anything. Thank you. Is that you, Ben? Okay, you guys are the noisy corner over here today. So if you need to know how to fill a hole in your drywall, YouTube. If you've got a leaky pipe, YouTube. If you need to know how to, you're painting your wall, you need to know how to cut in this corner around this trim and blah, 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 blah. YouTube. If you need to know how to sharpen the blades on your rickety old lawnmower, YouTube. That's how most people, that's how most middle-aged men use YouTube. Can I tell you how I use YouTube? Dane and I, years ago, we saved up some money to go on an anniversary trip for our 25th wedding anniversary. And the year of our 25th wedding anniversary came around. It was kind of a wacky year. So we waited a full year. So for our 26th wedding anniversary, we went on a cruise. Bougie. It was at that time the biggest cruise ship ever made. The Symphony of the Seas, Royal Caribbean. We had never been on a cruise before. Now we've been on one cruise. We spent weeks before we went on the cruise watching YouTube videos so we know what to eat. That is time well spent. I didn't just want to show up like some noob and look around and go, where's the hot dog stand? I mean, that's what Bill would do. Bill eats hot dogs. I have a much better palate than that. I wanted to hit the ground running. I wanted to know what I was doing. I wanted to use every moment of my time. I had heard so many stories about buffets and 24-hour pizza and unattended ice cream machines. So we hit the boat. We hit the boat that Saturday morning. And one of our appointment dinings was a place called, now you need to know that, love languages, words of affirmation and acts of service. Dana's love language is chips and salsa. And so we had looked at the ship and we had looked at the food and we knew what we were doing. And one of our very first meals was this Mexican place called El Loco Fresh. Now, I don't speak Spanish. Do you know what El Loco Fresh means? Crazy fresh, I think. I don't know. El Loco Fresh. And we had watched videos and we had seen, chips and salsa and tacos and burritos. And they had a fixins bar. Do you know? Tons and tons and tons of stuff completely left unattended. You can go and get as much as you want. So if you want bowls and bowls and bowls of nacho cheese, the very nice people at Royal Caribbean have made that an opportunity for you. So one of our very first meals, we went to El Loco Fresh. Now, do you know that people on the internet lie? We were so excited. It did not look like that. Here's what happens when you put a fixins bar near a cruise ship swimming pool. 1,000 little 8-year-olds run all over the place and touch everything. The nacho cheese is in the taco chicken. The tomatoes are in the sour cream. The guac is everywhere, and there's mounds of chips, like in a 3-county area out in the middle of the ocean. It was not El Loco fresh. The good news is there was a lot of it. The bad news is it wasn't very good. You know, every once in a while, pastors have to say very hard things to their congregations. Let me tell you a very hard thing. Kind of like Golden Corral. The good news is there's a lot of it. It's not very good. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. And so we went and we ate. We ate hard. Do you know who goes on cruises? You've probably heard this before. You know who? Three groups go on cruises. Newlywed, overfed, nearly dead. I wish I had made that up. That's funny. The newlywed, bunch of cute little young couples. The overfed, that was me and Dana all week. You know, the pizza, it was 24 hours, but it wasn't very good. Ice cream, anytime you wanted. It wasn't as good as Dairy Queen. Just, you know. And El Loco Fresh, meh. The good news is there was a lot of it. The bad news it wasn't very good. We filled up all week long. But much of the food wasn't very satisfying. In John chapter 6, we read about a feast. It's a miracle. All the other gospels, all throughout the Bible, they call them miracles. John calls them signs. This is one of the signs that Jesus was the Son of God. This is one of the signs that Jesus had the power to do all the things that he did and that he said he would do. John chapter 6. We're going to read a chunk of John chapter 6 today. A lot of times I'll ask you to stand, but you can have a seat because we're going to kind of go through it piecemeal this morning. But if you remember, Jesus has been up in Galilee and then down in Jerusalem and then in Samaria in the middle, and then he's back down in Jerusalem, and now he's back up in Galilee, back up in his home country, back up in his stomping grounds where he grew up near Nazareth and Capernaum and Bethsaida, up near the Sea of Galilee. That's where Jesus was from, and that's where most of his disciples were from. They're kind of back in their home country now, up in Galilee. So chapter 6 starts like this. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs that he had performed by healing the sick. Last week, we looked at chapter 5, and Jesus healed a paralytic. For 38 years, he had been paralyzed, and he had been sitting by the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus sees him and heals him. And people saw this, and they're drawn to Jesus. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. When rabbis sit down, they're teaching, and their students gather around, often at their rabbi's feet, and they listen to their rabbi. Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up from teaching his disciples, when he looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Why Philip? He's from there. Okay, we learn in chapter 1 that Philip was, I think I'm pronouncing this right, from Bethsaida. Not Bethesda, Bethsaida. Philip, I believe, is from Bethsaida. Now, little towns at the north part of the Sea of Galilee, you know, there's Bethsaida, and then there's Capernaum, where where Peter and Andrew and James and John, and then in there somewhere, these cities, some of these cities are 3, 4, 5 miles apart. Some are 7, 8, 9 miles apart, but a pretty small area. Jesus looks at Philip and says, "Where are we going to get food for all these people?" He asks Philip because this is where he's from. If you ask me, Rich, I'm going to Huntsville, Alabama. Where can I get a good buffalo wing? I would say, thank you for asking. You go to Beauregard's and you get the large special 12 wings, seasoned fries, sweet tea. You'll never be happier. How would I know that? Because that's where I lived. I know such things. Jesus looks at Philip and says, where are we going to get food for all these people? Now, Jesus rarely asked questions that he didn't already know the answer to, so y'all remember that next time when Jesus asks you a question. He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one of these people to have a bite. Jesus, I don't know if you've looked in the pocketbook lately, but we're scraping bottom, and it would take half a year's wages. Now, I don't know if you make $20,000 a year and that means $10,000, or if you make $100,000 and that means $50,000, but there's many, many, many dollars to give everybody in this crowd just a bite. Another of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up with the world's most moronic solution. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Now, somebody in first service said that is the first instance in the Bible of the school cafeteria bully. Andrew just grabs some little boy's lunch and says, here's lunch. I don't think it actually worked out like that, but the words here, I believe in Greek, are little boy, not teenager, not young man, little boy. It's translated in my translation, 5 small barley loaves, small, literal, small barley loaves. Barley loaves is what the poor folks ate. Wheat bread is what the bougie people ate. These were barley loaves, and they were small, and 2 small fish. This is a little boy's lunch. And I don't know if he hadn't tucked into it yet. I don't know if this is just what was left over. But Andrew says, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But come on, realistically, how far is that going to go with so many? And Jesus says, under his breath, y'all watch this. And he says, have the people sit down. And there was plenty of grass in that place. Remember, they're on a mountainside. They're on a hilltop. And they sat down. There were about 5,000 men, plus women, plus children. Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. Everybody ate. They didn't just eat a little. They ate till they were stuffed. Yeah, miraculous. That's a miracle. We're not talking about that today. That's miraculous. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Sounds like every mom in the 70s and 80s. Y'all get the Tupperware. We're not wasting this. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left by everybody who had eaten. This is miraculous. Everybody eats, not just a little, not just a bite, not just everybody gets a tiny little piece of a crumb of the little boy's 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. Everybody ate to their fill. 5,000 men plus women plus children. Do the math. Maybe 15,000 people, give or take, on this hillside. Everybody eats from one little boy's happy meal. Miraculous. There's lots to dive into. We're not going to dive in. Verse 14. After the people saw the sign, the miracle, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet. That's Old Testament language. That's Jewish heritage. He's the one. He's maybe the Messiah. He's the prophet. He's the one that's going to come and lift us up and liberate us from Rome and bring us back, make Israel great again. He's the one. And Jesus, verse 15, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. King? Where did king come from? Nobody said anything about king, but Jesus knows us. He started to hear the rumblings, and they were saying, he's the one, he's the one, he's the one. And Jesus knew he didn't come to be king of this earth. Quit trying to make your leaders kings and your kings messiahs, church. Our leaders are not messiahs. And Jesus has no interest in being president of the United States. Do you know that? Okay, he really doesn't. Now, he'd make a good one. But he's got way different agenda than that. There's lots there we're not talking about. Verse 16, when evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, and they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. Now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. And when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were wigging out. That's Greek. They were frightened. But Jesus said to them, it's me, don't be afraid. And when they were willing, to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were headed. Another great miracle, another sign, and we're not talking about that either. Verse 22, the next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that there had been only one boat. So all these people yesterday were fed. Remember the feeding of the 5,000, the barley loaves and the fish, 5,000 men plus women plus children. They're over here on the hillside. And the disciples get into the boat, one boat, and row across part of the sea, and they go someplace else. Jesus didn't leave with them. The people notice that the disciples aren't there, Jesus isn't there, the boat's gone. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite side of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but they were all gone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor the disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. They went looking for Jesus. Why? Thank you for asking. Hang in there. Verse 25, when they found him on the other side, they go looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? And Jesus said, very truly I tell you, you're looking for me. Not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. You're here because you're hungry again, aren't you? Now, that is kind of what we're talking. Jesus fed them yesterday. And it was a good meal. It was not El Loco Fresh. It was a good meal. It was barley. It wasn't wheat bread, but it was good. And there was a lot of it. He fed them. Everyone had their fill. He did a miracle. I don't know what that barley loaf tasted like. I don't know what those fish tasted like. But Jesus did the miraculous and fed everyone. Fed way more than one little boy as intended. He fed 15,000 people, and there was leftovers. And then they realize Jesus isn't there, so they go and find him. Why? Because they're hungry again. Hey, Jesus, remember yesterday when you fed us? Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, we're hungry again. See, I had lunch yesterday. You know what I'm going to do today? Do you know what today is? There's a very special sports ball game today. Okay? I don't care who wins. I want it to be a one-score game in the last 2 minutes. I'll be happy. I've got a streak going. 40 straight years, the Bears have not won the Super Bowl. Today is Super Bowl 60. My streak goes back to 13. I know some of you are a little older than me, but back in the Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Steelers, Cowboys meeting. I've seen this every Super Bowl since then. I've got a streak going. That streak will continue. But do you know what the high point of today is? Food! food. We're having nachos. If Josh was to come to my house, I'd say, those are nachos. Josh, go eat your own. These are ours. I know, that was really dumb. I don't know why I did that. That was really stupid. But we're going to eat today. I ate yesterday and was filled, but I hunger again. Jesus is talking to these people who are following him around. And he's saying, you're not here because of who I am. You're here because you're hungry again. That meal yesterday, the barley loaves and the fish, it fed you for a moment, but you're hungry again. Look at verse 26. Very truly, I tell you, you're looking for me, not because you saw the sign I performed, but because you ate the loaves and you had your fill. Don't work for food that spoils. Don't build your life on stuff that is in the end empty, meaningless, hollow, fleeting. Don't work for the food that spoils, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him, God the Father has placed his seal of approval. A couple of years ago, we preached this passage. And we looked at this passage, and let me share just a couple of things that I shared with you a couple of years ago. There are things in this world that we pursue, that we feed on, that are empty. Getting stuff, owning stuff, buying stuff, collecting stuff. Everything that's in your house that you've spent money on used to be money. And now it's stuff. And do you know what's going to happen when you go to meet your maker? Your kids are either going to fight over it or throw it away. Owning stuff, collecting stuff, being rich, having material goods, it's empty. Our social life, our relationships, good ones, our marriages, our kids, are some of the best things in this life. Fill us, but not in the way that Jesus can. Social media, beauty, good looks. Me and Patrick, you would think that we would be happy looking like we do. But even this it's not fulfilling. Knowledge and schooling can't fully satisfy us. Did you guys know that Hunter finished his master's degree? Your master's degree is in what? Theology and biblical studies. Hoity-toity-toity. My master's degree is in YouTube research for Symphony of the Seas, El Loco Fresh. Even our spiritual practices, and I hate to admit this, but church attendance, giving, Bible study, prayer can be empty without Jesus. We're just going through it fills us for the moment, but it doesn't satisfy. Jesus, later in John's gospel, says, I have come that you might have life to the full, abundant life. If you want to know what truly fills us and feeds us, Jesus is about to tell us. Verse 26, very truly I tell you, you're looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and you had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him, God the Father has placed his seal of approval. The crowd, the people who chased Jesus to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, they said, what must we do to do the works that God requires? Good, Jesus, give us, what do we do then? What do we do? Jesus said, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. Believe in the one he has sent. Really? That's kind of what Jesus said to Nicodemus. God loved the world so much that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him. Now, there's more steps after that, but the first step is belief. We believe in Jesus. We come. In fact, That phrase, if you want to do a deep dive into Paul, we're in the book of Romans on Wednesday nights. If you want to do a deep dive into Paul and a lot of the New Testament writers, they don't talk as much about being a Christian or getting saved. They talk about being in Christ, in him. The work of God is this, to believe in the one he sent. Verse 30. So then they asked him, what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe in you? We want to believe. So give us a sign. What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. Do you remember the manna, Old Testament story? All the slaves, all the Israelites come out of slavery, come out of Egypt, and they spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness. And there is no Burger King in the wilderness. There's no Food Lion in the wilderness. There's no Sonic Drive-In in the wilderness. There's nothing to eat in the wilderness. There's sand. And that doesn't feed hundreds of thousands of people. And God fed them for decades on something called manna. We don't even know exactly what manna was like. They just know that every morning they woke up and it was there. And it sustained them. And he gave them a day's worth of manna every day. Except for Friday. He gave them 2 days' worth because of the Sabbath. But they couldn't hold on to it. They couldn't put it in Tupperware. They couldn't put it in the fridge and come back to it later. He didn't give them he didn't give them a week's worth or a month's worth. He gave them a day at a time so they would learn that all of their sustenance comes from God. That God is the supply every single day. Only he fills us. Only he can satisfy us. And these people know it. They said, our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it's written. He gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, it's not Moses who's given you the bread from heaven, but it's my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Not just who keeps a bunch of former slaves alive in the wilderness. He gives light to the whole world. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. That sounds good. Give us this bread. Jesus says, I am the bread. I'm tired. I'm the bread. What does that mean? I'm not even exactly sure what that means. Let me read this. Jesus is the bread of life. He doesn't just give the bread of life. He is the bread of life. He is the living water. He doesn't just give living water. Remember, that's the conversation Jesus had with the woman at the well in chapter 4. He said to the woman at the well, if you knew who was talking to you, you'd ask me for water. Sir, I don't see your bucket. We're not just talking about water. You would never thirst again if you had what I could offer you. Jesus here is saying you would never be hungry again on the things of this world. You can eat and eat and eat and eat and eat on the things of this world, on stuff and status and riches and money and pretty and success. You can feed on that all your life and you won't be filled. You won't be satisfied. Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. See, the manna thing was the turning point. The people said, oh yeah, we remember in the Old Testament, God gave Moses and Moses gave us the sign of manna. What are you going to give us? And Jesus says, it's not about the manna. It's not about waking up every day and having to refeed. I'm the bread of life. I'm the supply. We come to the table at the close of service today. And, we've been a church. I mean, not us, but we've been a church for about 2,000 years. Since Jesus walked the earth and then to the cross and then the resurrection and the day of Pentecost and the church was born, we've been a people. We've been a movement for about 2,000 years. And for about 1,500 years, Do you know what the pinnacle of the service was? Man, I hate to break it to you, but it wasn't the sermon. I hate that. The pinnacle of the service wasn't the sermon. The climax of the service wasn't the worship band. It wasn't the offering. It wasn't the choir number. It wasn't the foyer coffee. It wasn't the prayer time. It wasn't the announcements. It wasn't the VBS program. It wasn't the report from the Lincoln's home team. It's not the pulpit. It's not the microphones. It wasn't the sound booth. It wasn't the screen. Do you know what the pinnacle of the service was? It was the table. The climax of the service was coming to the table. Do you know why? Because before Jesus went to the cross, he looked at his disciples at the table and he broke bread and he said, "This is my body. This is me." Now, we're not Catholic. So there's a whole Catholic thing and transubstantiation and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we get fixated on that. I'm thrilled for them. They believe a certain thing. We believe differently. But it's more than just a symbol. So often we Wesleyans, particularly us Nazarenes, we've fallen on the side of this is a symbol. It is, but it's more than that. Jesus says, "This is my body." With as fabulous of a sermon as this is, if you knew that Jesus was in the foyer, you would drop me like a bag of doorknobs and go out and be with Jesus. Jesus invites us to the table and says, "Come, receive me and be satisfied." Dana and I went to El Loco Fresh and we were filled. I don't remember how we felt later that night. The good news is there was a lot of it. Bad news was it wasn't very good. But Jesus satisfies. I barely know what that means for me. I'm not positive what it means for you. But it's not my reputation on the line today. Jesus says, "I'm the bread." This is the first of the I am statements in John. John has 7 I am statements. This is the very first one. "I am the bread of life. He who receives me will never hunger again." Build your life on money. Good luck. Build your life on success. Build your life on accomplishments. Build your life on anything else. It's empty. It's hollow. Jesus says, "I fill and satisfy."